Hello, my name is Barry and welcome to Barry's Kitchen. Today we're going to go ahead and do beef stroganoff, and we're going to do it a little bit differently because we're going to go ahead and do it in a crock pot. Now, crock pot is a little bit longer way for you to be able to do it, but it gives you some flexibility because what you're going to do this evening is you're going to go ahead and put all the ingredients in the crock pot, set it on low, and then tomorrow evening we'll go ahead and finish the recipe. In order to do that, we need some meat. London broil is what I'm using. You can easily use stew meat if it's cheaper or on sale. About 1.5 pounds. I've got more of the meat here than I regularly use, so I'm going to go ahead and use a double recipe here. Depending on the size of your crock pot, you can go ahead and do that. So 1.5 pounds of meat. You're going to use 1 onion. If you love onions, add more onions. About 1/2 cup is what the recipe calls for, but if you like more onions, feel free to add more onions. We're going to use 1 can of golden mushroom soup, and that's important. We're going to go ahead and have 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. We're going to have some salt and pepper. We're going to then have mushrooms, but we're going to add those at the last end of the process. And last but not least, to make it a little bit more creamy, we're going to add cream cheese, about 1/2 bar of cream cheese for a regular recipe. Mushrooms, as many as you want, as little or as many as you want. A little variation on this recipe that I like is I go ahead and add wine to the recipe. Well, I add wine to drink while I'm making the recipe, but I also add some in as I'm cooking the beef stroganoff. The London broil can be cut thinly sliced in strips. It can be cut into cubes. When I was growing up, my mom loved to make it into cubes, make it little chunks, bite-sized chunks. Some people like it in long strips. You can do it either way. So I've gone ahead and done a little bit of each, and you just throw it in the crock pot. Again, this is a very easy recipe for you to do. There's not a whole lot of danger of subtleties in it. The onions, the same way. You can make them chunky, you can make them really fine, any way you want to be able to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just chop up the onions, and I'm not going to be wholly careful about making them all the same size or how big or how small they are. Again, it's personal preference. If you want to make them all small, feel free to go ahead and do so. So I've got the meat and the onions in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in the golden cream of mushroom soup. And all I'm going to do is take it and just dump it in here. And again, I did a double recipe, so I'm going to go ahead and put in 2 cans. But most of you will probably just be doing a single recipe, 1 can. So that goes in. I put in 1/4 cup of water for a single recipe. And I'm only putting in 1/4 cup for a double recipe because I'm going to go ahead and add some wine in here. If you're doing a single recipe, feel free to substitute wine for the water. It doesn't hurt to go in and add, both 1/4 cup of water and a little bit of wine. It'll all evaporate out through the process. And again, that cream cheese at the end is going to thicken it up for you. So I added a little bit of wine, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and you can use a measuring spoon, but I just, that looks like about a tablespoon for me. So I'm good to go. A little bit of salt and pepper. I don't really add a whole lot of salt, so I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of pepper there and put the cover on this. I'll probably mix it up just a bit, just to say I did it. Like so. Put the cover on. Turn it up on low. And leave it overnight. Now what's going to happen tomorrow is you're going to get home from work. Have another glass of wine. You're going to cut up your mushrooms, which I'll show you. And then right before you serve it, you're going to go ahead and put in the cream cheese. So we'll get to that in just a second. We've been cooking this all day. As soon as I got home, I went and added the mushrooms. But you can tell that everything in here is nice and blended. We have our meat, onions, golden mushroom soup, a little bit of water, Worcestershire, and some wine. So we're going to let this sit for about an hour, and if you're in a hurry to eat, go ahead and put the crock pot on high, and we'll talk about the next step of the process. So as you can see, we're in the home stretch. We've gotten everything in the crock pot except for one ingredient. As soon as I came home, I wouldn't put the mushrooms in before I changed clothes and was able to get a glass of wine. One nice thing that you can do is last night during the preparation when we're putting everything else in the crock pot, you can go ahead and cut up your mushrooms, throw them in a Ziploc bag so that when you come home you don't have a whole lot of preparation to do. That's always a nice way for you to be able to save 10-15 minutes of time. Once they're in the crock pot, as I mentioned before, you can go ahead and turn it on high if you're in a hurry, leave it on low if you're not. Half hour to an hour, go ahead and check on it a couple times and you're good to go. When you're looking like you're about ready to serve, go ahead and put your water on if you're going to go ahead and use noodles or use rice. Some other people, if they don't want the carbs associated with all that, will take cauliflower. Cook up cauliflower till it's nice and tender, mash it up, and then you can serve the beef stroganoff over the cauliflower. It actually tastes pretty good. We've used it in substitution for mashed potatoes a couple of times. So the last step in the process, I'm going to go ahead and take the cover back off of this. Have a glass of wine because it has been a long day. And add the cream cheese. Again, I mentioned about half a bar of cream cheese. Use the good stuff, don't use the diet stuff. It just doesn't taste the same for me. So I'm going to take that, break it up into little chunks. Again, you want this to be at near room temperature as you can get. Why? It just makes it easier for it to go in and melt and to get part of the process here. So once that is in, I'm going to go ahead and stir it. I'm not going to go in and beat this stuff to death because I don't want all the meat to separate. So I'm going to let it sit in there for a couple minutes and then I'm going to go ahead and stir it in. And what you will see is it will get to be a nice creamy lighter brown than what was in there before. And that may take about 10-15 minutes for you to be able to get that incorporated in there. At the same time your noodles are cooking. Go ahead and have a nice salad with this, a little bit of broccoli on the side, and you've got a great meal, a nice hot meal that's prepared, in a half hour to an hour after you come home. Looks like you spent a lot of time on it, but you haven't. I'm going to go ahead and show you the end result here and see what you think. The cream cheese has been in there for a couple of minutes now, and I've stirred it in. You can see that the mixture has become a little bit lighter, a little bit more creamy, and it looks and smells absolutely delicious. I think we're about ready to serve this. Thank you all for joining me in Barry's Kitchen. I think this beef stroganoff recipe is very simple, very easy to do. It's quick. Within an hour after you get home, you're really going to enjoy what you've created here. So join us next time for another episode, and have a good meal.